now.
All right, welcome everybody. We thought we'd just get into the studio tonight and film a little recap from day one of our conference. There's actually a pre-conference ahead of time, so this is like day 3, but it's day 1. It's the first day. I've got here with me my friend Paul, who's from California, and my friend Mo from Chicago. And I don't know, maybe first, before we get into the content of the day, since you guys are new on this podcast, just if I could get you to say a little bit about yourself, who you are, why you came here, anything interesting about you, if there is anything.
Can we talk about the other one?
Are we doing age before negativity? Or
Mo's very interesting.
Let's go. Mo, tell us something.
All right, so
who
Mo,
are you?
Well, first of all, Mo is short for Moisés. My name is Moisés Pacheco. I'm a church planter and pastor out of Chicago.
Right.
So I planted a church, the best time to do it in 2020. And so we're still navigating, figuring that out. So as a church planter, obviously this Multiply Conference is relevant to the very work that I do.
Okay. Now, you planted in 2020
Yes.
a Christian Reformed church.
Yes, on the west side of Chicago.
Okay. And just tell us give us the
So yeah,
50,000 feet flyover.
I felt called in 2018 to plant a church. I spoke with Christian Reformed pastor Roger Nelson, and he said, "Yeah, I think our church is ready to send a plant, but there's a lot of red tape." So this was 2018 that the conversation began, and so it was by 2020 that we were kind of ready to go. So it was a 2-year process of planning. There are no real there's no Christian Reformed churches in my neighborhood. There used to be East Garfield Christian Reformed Church that closed in 1981. But no, the only thing in my church is a bunch of storefront and missionary Baptist churches that are attended by people in the suburbs. So I felt the Lord calling me to plant a community-based church. And so I had my classical examination in February of 2020, and the goal was to launch that Easter, but then COVID happened, and it was illegal to go to church in Chicago at that time.
Hard to plant a church when it becomes illegal for anyone to go there.
That was tricky to navigate. I'm not exactly the most law-abiding citizen, but apparently a lot of people that go to church are, and so it was tricky. But we started doing backyard Bible studies, and then when we were allowed to meet in person again, we rented a facility and been meeting for a little over 4 years now.
Okay, awesome. That's great. And I got Paul here too. Who are you?
Which camera's looking at me? The one that's staring me in the face?
I don't know. They probably all are.
All right, that one. You there. My name's Paul Vander Klay, and I am the pastor of Livingstone's Christian Reformed Church in Sacramento, California. And I don't know. What's interesting about me? I do a little YouTube thing. I have a podcast. There's a thing called Estuary, which is a movement of discussion groups that are church adjacent, and they're all over the world. Estuaryhub.com in case you want to look it up.
You just did a really amazing conference in the Chicago area.
Just had a really amazing conference that Mo helped to put on in the Chicago area. And so when Scott called me and said he wanted to do this, and I thought it's really important to do this because the Christian Reformed Church, I think, could use some more thinking about discipleship and multiplication. The Christian Reformed Church just had a big fight over something else. And now that fight is, I think, mostly through us, I think it's time to get at what is really important in the Christian Reformed Church. And so I was really happy to see this conference planned. And so I was super happy to be here.
Okay. And it's awesome to have you here on this podcast. I think let's say, what was it, 2023, when I was at Synod, you were not there.
I was not there.
But somehow it was as though you were there. And I really showed up with the single issue of hey, enough neglecting the fact that we're in a major decline. We have got to start making a plan for renewal. And it was hilarious how it went because I had previously, 5 years ago in 2017, sent a similar overture, and I saw what happened to it, and I tried to learn from what I thought my mistakes were with regard to that overture. And it was quite a process. I mean, how this all came together. And I just wouldn't let it die, and I took to the floor. And anyway, somehow or another, it all turned out. But what was great about it was, whatever my memories are, Paul produced this video.
Was it Scott Goes?
That was hilarious.
Something like that.
Oh, my
Reverend
goodness.
Vander Klay goes to Synod.
Goes to Synod, yeah.
You made it so much better for me. I mean, it is something.
Well, Scott, I've watched Synod a lot of my life, and I have rarely seen anyone through sheer will and determination not let their overture die. And you did it masterfully. And so it was a joy to watch. And I know that a lot of people aren't Synod watchers and so wouldn't appreciate what you did. And so I made it my goal to make sure it was appreciated.
When I took notes, and I'm going to Synod this year, so watch out.
What's going to happen now, Mo? What are you going to push through?
We'll see.
I can't wait.
We'll wait for the Paul Vander Klay video.
I was
If
amazed.
you succeed.
The subtleties you were able to discern from California of the things that were, and you just made it so hilarious. Anyway, now we're back at Synod this year, and you were there.
I was.
And it was like round 2 for me.
Yeah.
This time about church planting.
Yeah.
And I just, I don't know, our classes from our perspective, we just couldn't imagine that church planting was going to fall so far down on the priority list. Yeah. And so I sort of came, again, single focus. There was other stuff going on too. I had to chair an advisory committee again, which I did, but I really had, this is why I'm here. And yeah, you were there, part of that too. And that resulted in our Synod unanimously deciding to try to put together a denominational plan for church planting. And then leaving Synod, I thought to myself, I think this has to be a grassroots effort. I don't think we can just put this in the hands of, you know, the agencies and the center and then just step back and think something's going to happen. And having that conviction, I thought, okay, you know, if it's going to be a grassroots effort, we have to do something from somewhere. And then I went, uh-oh, I might be that someone from somewhere who has to do something.
It's usually how it works, right?
And I'm really glad that everybody showed up to this. You know, I sense that there's some momentum here. There's certainly interest. People have paid to come. So I just wonder, before we recap the day here, just what are your thoughts overall, the two of you? Why'd you come here, and why is this important, and what do you hope happens?
Shall I go first again, Paul?
I can go first if you want me to go.
Yes.
I wanted to come here because I very much wanted to support you in this. And even though it was really amazing to watch you push your thing through Synod, I knew that for all the good intentions of our wonderful people that work at that level, they are not at the level that actually does this thing. Mm-hmm. And I was on the Home Missions Board for 10 years and was the president of the Board of Home Missions. That was before it got rolled with World Missions into Resonate. And back when we were planting a lot of churches, the culture was different. The denomination was in a very different place. And I knew that Synod can stand on its head and, you know, devote its, you know, pledge its undying love for church planting all at once. But that's not the level at which this movement is going to happen. And I think we are entering into a season when classis will have more resources. And I think actually it's at the classical level that we can see mobilization for church planting. And so I think that classical renewal, which classis is sort of the abandoned third child of our 3 assembly system. It is under-resourced, it is not paid attention to, and it is weak. But it is actually at that level that if we're going to see a lot more churches planted, that's the level it's going to have to come through. And the same with leaders and training leaders. And especially given that we have a lot of churches that are smallish or struggling with viability. And so even if the denomination wants to be supportive, they can. But in many ways, I think the binational level is probably going to be in a season for struggle for the next decade. And so this has to be targeted at classis and local churches. And so that's why I knew I wanted this to happen and I wanted to be here. And, you know, it's going to require, it's easier to get something done in a centralized structure where there's someone in a seat that can say, make this happen. But this isn't the kind of thing that Zach King can say, make this happen all he wants. And it's not at that level. And so we really have to look at the classical level and at the local level. And so that's why this conference is important.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, first I would like to say I affirm everything you said. I'm just like, yes, there's no way I could have said that myself, but I affirm it all. And there's not a whole lot of things that you say, Paul, that I'm wholeheartedly just affirm. But I'm here for a variety of reasons. One of which is that being a bit skeptical, as one that's been trying to plant the church in this denomination for several years. I don't have a whole lot of confidence in the denomination to even know what a church plant means anymore. There's just been so much disconnect. But I met you, Scott, at Gather almost a year ago now, and just in our brief conversations, I've kind of appreciated the way that you think. And so even though I heard about this conference and I'm skeptical, I was like, I am curious of what Scott's doing. So as part of it was I wanted to see your church finally, and get a feel for what you're doing here. But also when it comes to a lot of these things, I love meeting other people throughout our denomination and picking their brain. A lot of them have questions about what's going on in Chicago. You know, recently there was the closing of Trinity, or announcement of the closing of Trinity Christian College. So a lot of questions about that. And so being able to talk with people that I feel to a certain degree, though we're far apart, we're on similar wavelengths. I enjoy doing that. So for me, a large part of it is not even the conference. It's like the being around the people at the conference. Every now and then using what I like to call my Jordan Hall pass. Jordan Hall would never go to the sessions at a conference. He just stays in the hallway, talks to people. I didn't do that, not for all of it, but there was a few things that I missed because I was in the hallway talking to people, and I really enjoy that.
Well, I'll tell you what, this is my thinking, and I could be totally off, I could be totally wrong, but I think our church has a lot of interaction with the churches of our classis. So our classis is actually, I think, a very unique place. When I first got here 21 years ago, it was much different than it is now. Now, we are very unified. I think we all sense a mission together. And everyone who's been here has been here kind of long term, except for all these new leaders that are coming. But they've been here a long time, too, because we've all been working with them. And, there's a real unity. And I think what's happened is, beyond the unity, there's some kind of synergy where we're spurring each other on, we're encouraging each other, we're helping each other, and so there's some dynamic that's just sort of happened.
And I think it's also inspirational, too, because I've seen church planting plans come out of two other classes that are also healthy in that way, that I am pretty confident we're kind of spurred on by your encouragement. And I'm like, I actually like these plans. So I think there's something getting started here.
There's something going on, but here's the thing. I don't know, this is my view of the way our denomination is set up, and it could just be because I'm so far flung in Florida from the center. But I hardly get any interaction with anyone else outside of our classes. It's like we have our classes, and then we relate to the center, but we don't relate to each other. So when was the last time our classes interacted with each other in any way? And I think the answer is we don't. There's no interaction whatsoever. And so I actually think the most important thing that's happening right now is that we're building some relationships. And I feel quite certain that if we're going to get a church planting movement going, it's only going to happen if we start interacting with each other. And I'm not sure why our denomination is set up the way it is, such that you relate to your classis and then you relate to the center, but there's nothing that causes us to relate to each other. And I think that's probably what's going to be needed next.
Well, and I also think, like, your classes seems to be healthy, and there's a couple others I've interacted with that are also healthy. But there's a lot of classes where the churches themselves don't even interact with each other very much.
Yeah, I realize that.
My current classes that I'm in, classes in Northern Illinois, we're starting to see that we all know each other and have pretty good relationships, but we don't interact a whole lot. And we're trying to change that around. But, yeah, a lot of that has dissipated throughout the denomination. So I think, in my opinion, step one is more interaction in each classes, and then more interaction between the classes.
Do your listeners know what a classis is?
We talk about it, but almost no one knows what a classis is. I hardly know what a classis is.
Classis is a Dutch word for a flotilla of ships.
What's a flotilla?
A flotilla is a group of ships on a mission. But I think you're right that classis, Dave Snapper drew my attention once to a diagram in a yearbook, which is the Christian Reformed Church annual with numbers and addresses in, which had a chart of these lines going between Grand Rapids and the rest of the continent. And that was the conceptualization. The Christian Reformed Church was a church that very much had a lot of denominational loyalty, a lot of denominational unity, and centrality. And I think you're right that the kind of age we're in means that we're going to resource our wisdom, probably not centrally. That doesn't mean that there isn't a role for the denomination to broker and to help connect, but I think we're going to find our wisdom coming up from different places, because North America is a very diverse mission field. And again, just like you, part of the reason I wanted to come to this is I wanted to come to see your church and to get my sense of what's going on here, because people might say, oh, Florida and California, they're both sort of edge states. Florida and California are very different.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true.
But also some other ways that we're alike. And so there's nothing like being someplace, seeing some things, and getting a sense for what's going on. But I agree that we will likely begin to see leadership spring up from different places. And then I think the new task of the denomination is going to be much more of a broker and a connector rather than a source of funding and a source of wisdom and direction.
Yeah, I think that's right. I see it that way too. All right, let's talk about what happened today. Day one recap. So what stood out?
Well, I love that Jordan Hall pass idea. So Jordan Hall is a mutual friend of ours who I went to a major conference with him in the UK, and he attended none of the plenary sessions, not one. I attended about a third of them. But for me to go to a conference like this, it's as important to meet with whoever else is here than to be in the main room and interact.
Yep.
And so to me, it was reconnecting with some people that I haven't seen for a while, meeting some new people, and that for me is always a highlight. So it almost, and the same for my Estuary conferences. We use the big stage because for a lot of people, they won't come unless there's something on the big stage. But that's when I can meet them.
Well, that was the one thing I actually appreciated. So when I first looked at the schedule for the conference, I was a bit discouraged. I was like, man, it looks really full. And the thing that I want to do is just talk to people. But actually, those things that were on the itinerary, a lot of it involved the discussions between people. So I really appreciated that there was a lot of purposeful time given to allow people to interact and talk, longer meal times and things like that. So that was one of the biggest things that stood out to me in a positive direction.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. We kind of have, for this conference, we've got 4 letters up on our stage. MDLC. M for multiply, then disciples, leaders, churches. And today, we really spent time with regard to multiplication, and especially gospel identity, and then disciple making. Tomorrow we're going to spend more time on developing leaders and planting churches. Yeah, what do you think with regard to multiplication or disciple making? Was there anything that you kind of said, oh, hey, we got to pay more attention to this, or actually scratch the M and the D?
My breakout group that met, I think part of what the church is going to wrestle with in the next season, however long that is going to be the shape of disciple making, because I think part of what we've seen in the Christian Reformed Church is a crisis of transmission. And so formal programmatic discipleship is definitely needed. One of the things because I think historically we've assumed transmission will simply happen in the way that parents don't teach their children how to parent by describing parenting or having them read a book.
Right.
They parent their children, and their children take that as their first draft to parent their own children. But I think in an age when people are no longer living in the town they grew up in, when they moved away from their church, they probably didn't start going to church again. They've been inundated with messages and religions and ideas through media, so that these historic implicit transmission mechanisms from generation to generation have been severely disrupted, and which requires us to be much more intentional about disciple making than we ever knew we had to be. But that then raises conversations about, what does it mean to be a disciple?
Yeah.
What does it mean to be Christ and bear witness to him in the place where I am located, especially among a place, I've driven around Florida a little bit. It's similar to California. It's similar to urban Chicago, in which there are people from all over the world, some of which have Christian traditions that they perhaps were raised in. Many others have no tradition they're raised in, other religions. Now suddenly there's a lot on the table. And so the implicit transmissions that especially many in the Christian Reformed Church were formed by have been disrupted. And so I think that necessitates a significant conversation about discipleship and how that is transmitted.
I think there's another aspect that I don't think anybody really wants to talk about. It's the idea of, somebody mentioned earlier in the day, discipling children, but more specifically, discipling your own children. I mentioned Pastor Roger Nelson a little while ago. He recently wrote an article for the Reformed Journal lamenting having a church full of people who have devoted themselves to the faith and the institutions of the church, but who have children that don't go to church at all, and not knowing why that is. And we can have different theories as to why that is, but there's two aspects of that. Is one, intentionally discipling your own children. Like I said, there's a lot of it that was been assumed or passive. So being more intentional about that, but also having children, like valuing the idea of life, and not out of comfort or some sort of self-fulfillment, but out of kind of obedience to God. And that's tricky. I mean, that's been a difficult thing for me to wrap my head around. For a long time, I was comfortable with 3 kids. And I'm like, I kind of would like to have more, but it's really inconvenient and they're really expensive. And my wife just had twins, so now I'm up to 5.
Wow.
Praise God for that. But it's like, if you were to talk to me 5 years ago, I don't know how wise I would have felt that to be. And I think there's a lot of, especially in America, first world America, having more than 2 kids seems really uncomfortable. But nobody wants to have that conversation either. Like, well, why is it so unthinkable? Why is it that people look oddly at my wife now because she's the mother of 5? And so I think that's a very uncomfortable conversation, the having kids, and then as parents taking a vested interest in the discipleship of your kids and not trying to just throw them off on the catechism teacher or the youth leader.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Thanks for interacting around that. Now, preview for tomorrow. So we ended tonight, and Zach King gave a little address. He mentioned in the address that we're starting to think about even putting some metrics to the idea of church planting. So I've been working really closely with Tim Sheridan, who is the director of church planting, and we have just sort of eyeballed, I don't know, it's more inexact, but just a couple of numbers, that in the next decade, we want to aspire to raise up 2,000 leaders. And out of that, we hope to maybe plant 1,000 churches. I personally think that the leadership development piece is the priority, and then the church planting piece will be sort of like the lagging result of how well we do at that first piece. We don't know if those are the right or wrong numbers. What we did is we basically took, okay, there's about 50 classes, there's 49. We said, what if everybody was able to raise up 40? And we realized classes are all different, so that's a real average number. But that'll be a huge departure from recent history, a needed one. We don't even have enough leaders right now for the churches we have, much less the churches we aspire to plant. So we've got to do something right now to help raise up leaders. And again, I sense it's going to kind of happen in the classis level. So one of the things I think is we're going to put this thing out there, and then we're going to tell everybody, now go back to your classes, and at your classes, have a conversation about this, and then report back how many leaders you guys think you can raise up in the next decade. Just, nobody has to be like some kind of prophet. You don't have to give us an exact number, but just what do you aspire to? Then we'll compile that up. Will it be more than 2,000? Will it be less than 2,000? But whatever, we'll have a number. What's your guys' reaction to that? Any thoughts?
Personally, I think it's great. I mean, one of the most frustrating parts for me has been the lack of metrics, period. And so if if your numbers are wrong, you came to them in a reasonable fashion. Like, I feel like it's not out of the blue or just pulling something out of the sky. So the fact that there are metrics that were come to with some sincere thought put into it, for me, that's refreshing, and it's a great start to begin with. Think of my classes right now. We have maybe about 7 functional churches left. And so for 40 leaders, you're talking about maybe 5 or 6 leaders per church. I don't think that's unreasonable.
I don't think so either.
Yeah.
In a decade?
Yeah, in a decade. Like, to a certain degree, if you're not doing that, that's a problem. Now, I think that's something else that our denomination has struggled with is what happens when you don't do that. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, it's a problem, and we should be able to call it out as a problem. Come on. Okay, raise up a leader. And, if it's different if, like, you raised up 6 leaders that all left and joined other churches and led those churches. You still raise 6 leaders.
Yeah.
Like, that's fine.
No big deal. That's awesome.
But if you're not doing any leaders, it's like, okay, what are the other metrics that you're pursuing? And if you do have other metrics that you're pursuing, cool, that's fine. But we have to have something. And I think too long there's been a lot of complacency in our denominational churches as to, well, we have money, we can keep going. And then there's been more pushed on the pastors. Because I think a lot of people say raise up leaders, they automatically think raising up pastors. That's not necessarily the case. It could be raising up elders, deacons, other leadership positions within the church. Because when you have a church plant, one of the big problems I've noticed is they put everything on the planting pastor. You ought to have a team, maybe a core team, potentially even a council. Like, imagine that if the classes, instead of raising up a church planting pastor, they just raised up a planting council that they could call a pastor into. Like,
okay,
that could be kind of cool.
That could be kind of cool.
It's a cool idea.
I just came up with that right now.
Wow. Imagine if we spend more time together.
The Disciple Standard podcast has it there first. Mo's big idea. I think that's a great way to proceed, to encourage classes to make a goal and to pursue it. My classis, I think, already does 40 or more, but we have a large classis, and my classis was really going a lot better. And then we had some stumbles, and I think it wouldn't take too much to really sort of get that pump going again and do a lot more.
Your classes might throw in for 80 or 100.
Yeah, I think our classes could do 100 in 10 years.
Yeah. So we need some classes like that to step out.
Yeah, and our classis really needs to get back into the church planting game. I think part of what we're also going to see in the CRC is I think we need I think we're going to need some more classical adjustments, because this is coming at the same time that the denomination is looking to downsize. And so I think there are too many smallish, gerrymandered classes right now in the denomination. And so we have 49 now. If we went down to somewhere in the high 30s, we could, if you had more classes with more body weight, because part of the difficulty is that you sort of want a critical mass at classis and enough of the right kinds and mixes of leaders to really do something like this. Because you want, and then you want a good, healthy stable of retired ministers there too that can also throw in. And again, part of the benefit of coming to something like this is when I talk to people, I usually try to sit by people that I don't know at meals, and then I ask them questions. And I usually ask questions about their classes, because some classes are discouraged, some classes have tried some things in the past and maybe were disappointed. And part of the weakness of our classis system is that almost all of the classical horsepower is levied from the individual churches. And when you've got churches that are struggling, they don't have a lot to give. And so I think some helping to make some classes a little bit larger with a little bit more body weight, that could mean then you might get, I think in our classes, maybe we'll restart our leadership development network, which we did before. I think it'll be different from before, because now we have the extension program at Calvin. And what happened with our leadership development program is that kind of became a feeder for the Calvin extension program. And that's fine. The Calvin extension program can train them in ways that we can't really do at the classical level. But in terms of raising up people with preaching credentials and raising up ministry associates, we can do that at the classical level. And for us in Central California, that was key in terms of church planting, but also more preachers in the area, which strengthen the churches, which sort of builds the whole system. Yeah. So I think the classis level is the place to go, and I think to challenge those classes. And then I think Resonate will have the challenge of figuring out how can we resource these classes and help, especially come around classes that don't have a lot of self-confidence, and figure out maybe how to connect them with another classes that does, or something like that, to give these classes some early wins. And again, usually with the classes, if they get a win or two, then you begin to get the momentum, and then you can get a virtuous cycle going. Right. But it's really key.
Right. Well, okay. Guys, thanks. There's one more thing to recap the day that I just have to do, which is it just turned out that as soon as people got here in Florida, Florida time took over. I was amazed how no one would come back on time. And then I went out and I tried one time to call people, and Mo actually became like the megaphone of this conference, a voice, a clarion voice calling out to the masses. I don't know how you did it, but you have a powerful voice.
I have a very loud voice, and I've often criticized for how loud that I talk. So it's nice for a change to have it be useful.
Oh, it was amazing.
But as you said, it's a good sign that people are talking out there, because that's the
what we want.
Outside the meeting where a lot of little knitting happens.
That's what we want. Anyway, all right. Thanks, guys. And everybody, thanks for watching.